Welcome, seekers of light, to a journey where the sacred meets the soul. Once again, you've proven them right, chosen soul. Since the dawn of your days, hidden watchers have trailed your every move, bracing for the moment when the final shroud lifts and you glimpse the secret they most feared. The old tales about you weren't idle chatter. They hinted at a fierce current pulsing through your being, while the masses chase empty applause and fragile victories. This raw energy rattles the custodians of order, toppling the walls they so painstakingly erected to bind and subdue. Yet none of this was disclosed to you. The calamities that nearly shattered your spirit were, in truth, the concluding rites of an odyssey that commenced long before your first breath. Each act of treachery, every moment you found yourself utterly isolated, every instance in which you believed the cosmos had turned its back, these were all deliberate steps leading you toward an unveiling so seismic that, once its meaning sinks in, the narrow world they mapped out for you will seem forever untenable. From the very beginning, you've stood apart. Even as a child, you instinctively peeled back the facades adults wore, sensing the hidden layers beneath polite conversation. While others were content brushing over reality's surface, you were drawn to the undercurrents of genuine meaning. Your gift wasn't something you studied. It was an innate radar for sincerity, cutting through pretense with surgical precision. What you didn't realize at the time, and what they fervently hoped you would never realize, is that this talent was only the beginning, the first indication of something much more potent brewing inside your mind, something that would ultimately jeopardize everything they had relied on to gain their control. It's not just emotional intelligence or intuition that runs through you. It's gnosis, the direct knowledge that relates directly to universal truth, without the need for intellectual interpretation. Institutions that benefit from maintaining humanity's reliance on outside leaders for direction have methodically repressed this age-old method of acquiring wisdom. In actuality, the most deep discoveries originate from the depths of consciousness that can only be accessible via personal transformation, but they have persuaded people that knowledge must only come from authorized channels, approved lecturers, and licensed programs. The pieces are now starting to fit together. This makes the pattern clear. The betrayals were planned. They weren't haphazard. Isolation served as preparation rather than punishment. Your character was the target of planned attacks that were intended to shatter you before you could completely realize who you really were. However, they attempted to bury you. Each betrayal was more premeditated than the one before it, and they came in waves. Friends who suddenly became adversaries. Relatives who all of a sudden lost the ability to comprehend your viewpoint. Co-workers who banded together to undermine your accomplishment. You may have begun to think that something was wrong with you because the pattern grew so consistent. Maybe you questioned whether you were too different, too intense, or too much for this sterile world they had made. Brothers and sisters, I believe God is positioning you for your greatest harvest yet. So today, I invite you to sow a seed of $20, $50, or whatever He lays on your heart by clicking the Super Thanks button. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. Luke 6 verse 38. When you choose to partner with us in this moment of faith, you're not just supporting our ministry, you're activating God's promise of overflow in your own life. Remember, every gift you give is a declaration that you trust God to multiply your provision. Tap that Super Thanks button now and watch Him turn your seed into a harvest beyond your wildest dreams. The planned assaults on your character weren't sporadic. Rather, they were methodical attempts to crush your soul before you could reach your greatest potential. They saw something in you that may reveal the hollowness underlying their meticulously crafted personalities, something that challenged their cozy illusions. Therefore, they coordinated their efforts, fabricating crises to drain your resources and energy, whispering poison in the ears of anyone who may be of assistance, and fabricating situations in which you were the solution they feared most rather than the problem. You saw firsthand the actual essence of human pack mentality during those harsh seasons. Individuals you had confided in about your weaknesses suddenly turned that personal information against you when it suited their political agenda. Those who had profited from your generosity conveniently became forgetful about your generosity. When upholding that love meant defying the opinions of the masses, those who had professed to love you revealed their actual selves. However, amid these planned assassination attempts on your character, something noteworthy occurred. As they anticipated, you became cynical and bitter, but instead you became even more discernible. You discovered how to tell the difference between people who put on a front of friendship and those whose affection never wavered in the face of social pressure. Even though the betrayals were terrible, they served as a filter that showed you who belonged in your inner circle and who had been pretending to be allies, while actually having ulterior motives. You were unaware at the time that every setback, every time you were alone, and every time they banded together to stop you from moving forward, was setting you up for something much bigger than their little brains could fathom. The cosmos was planning your ascent while they were busy planning your demise. Every betrayal meant tearing away everything that wasn't truly you, not shattering you. Your spirit was being honed into something indestructible by the anguish rather than destroyed. In the shadow of your isolation, the strength they attempted to take from you just grew stronger. Something special was taking place beneath the surface during those long evenings when you felt banished from everything you knew, and the weight of their rejection weighed down like a crushing force. Your gifts were growing. Your senses were becoming more acute. You were developing a deeper connection to the invisible worlds that would someday frighten people who had disregarded you. You see, you were going through an alchemical metamorphosis that only great souls go through while they were engaged in their trivial games of control and manipulation. Your awareness was sparked by the precise events they intended to devalue you. Every private tear you cried was sowing the seeds of wisdom that would ultimately grow into a garden of profound insight that would draw others from far and wide to sit with you. Your loneliness was a necessary preparation, not a punishment. In fact, you were being introduced into mysteries that most people never even glimpse during those periods of solitude when the quiet was deafening and it appeared as though the world had forgotten you. You learned to hear your higher self's whispers in the silence. You learned the difference between loneliness and solitude from your time alone. The rejection compelled you to look within your own wonderful being, the only place where it really mattered, for approval. Yellow heart if you're moved by divine love. Now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. Something spectacular was happening in the invisible worlds during those peaceful hours when everyone else was sleeping and you were lying awake, trying to comprehend the betrayals of the day. Your spiritual circuits were being upgraded. Your energetic signature was being tuned to a frequency that could channel pure divine intellect, and your consciousness was being rewired. In reality, the events that seemed to be proof of cosmic desertion were cosmic training for a duty that needed someone who had been completely stripped of all human nature illusions and rebuilt from the ground up. During this time of forced seclusion, the gifts that had always mingled at the periphery of your consciousness started to come alive. What started out as mild intuitive cues developed into clear inner direction. What had occasionally seemed like burdens, the ability to empathize, became a surgical tool for comprehending human nature. With a single touch, the healing energy that had periodically flickered through your fingertips transformed into a constant stream of transformative force capable of mending broken hearts and shattered spirits. Most importantly, though, you acquired what can only be called spiritual warfare skills, not the type that aim to injure or control, but the kind that identify falsehood at its root and destroy it with the use of unadulterated truth. You develop the ability to distinguish between true healing labor and ego-driven performance, between divine inspiration and deceptively disguised manipulation, and between spiritual materialism and genuine spiritual seeking. Now observe how you move across the world. Observe how you can detect the energy undercurrents in a room that others are unaware of as soon as you enter. Notice how you have an innate sense of who is acting out of genuine love and who is hiding behind well-made masks. See how you can see through lies with crystal clarity. How your words have the power to move mountains in people's minds, and how answers come to you before issues fully materialize. It's not luck. This is not an accident. This is the result of your struggles, the prize for perseverance, and the proof of your chosen position. They were actually strengthening your spirit each time they attempted to break it. They were unwittingly increasing the force of your voice every time they tried to stifle it. They were refining your light into a beacon that would someday lead countless souls out of their own darkness every time they attempted to dim it. The most exquisite aspect of your metamorphosis, however, is how you came out of the fire with the greater capacity for compassion rather than resentment. Most individuals who go through what you have become cynical, walled off from the outside world, and hardened. Not you. You somehow managed to love without conditions despite all the suffering and treachery. Despite every rational urge to erect barriers, you maintained an open heart. Even though you had every cause to doubt people, you persisted in believing in their goodwill. Your actual power is found in your ability to transform the negative energy of people who have harmed you into a healing force for others, not in your ability to exact revenge. You are now a living example of how suffering can be turned into meaning, how injuries can lead to insight, and how loneliness can lead to light. People are drawn to you because you have endured hardships and have somehow managed to maintain your brightness, not because you have had an easy life. You didn't study or acquire the knowledge that now flows through you through conventional means. It's gnosis, or direct understanding that communicates directly to the soul without going through the brain. Even you are frequently surprised by the words that flow out of your mouth when you are trying to help someone who is hurting. You're channeling insight from the limitless well of consciousness that you've learned to access through your challenges, not repeating facts you've memorized. This is the reason they were afraid of you from the start, not because of anything you had done, but because of what you stood for. The potential that someone who has found their own divine nature will eventually be too strong for their control mechanisms to handle. You are proving that their fictitious hierarchies are based on sand every time you refuse to be devalued by their games, every time you put love before fear, and every time you assist someone else in realizing their own value. Because you've turned into a catalyst for awakening everywhere you go. The pattern keeps repeating. The slumber condition that keeps most individuals confined is disturbed only by your presence. Just by being true to yourself, you might awaken something that has been dormant in others without even trying. Conflicts appear to follow you because of this, not because you start them, but because you call into question the fictitious comfort zones that others have constructed around their meager lives. However, take note of how you resolve these disputes now as opposed to how you did in the past. You now function from a place of unwavering inner knowing, whereas before you could have been reactive, defensive, and desperate to justify your value to people who were never able to see it. Like raindrops off a mountain, their opinions bounce off you. Their attempts to control you are like kids playing games you don't care about anymore. Their attempts to entice you into drama seem like invites to parties you're too sophisticated to go to. This distance comes naturally when you realize how valuable you are. It is neither chilly nor unkind. External validation is no longer necessary, not unpleasant, but unnecessary. Once you have reached the deepest level of self-awareness and have tapped the limitless reservoir of love and wisdom that resides within you, you can value connection without being destroyed by its absence, enjoy recognition without relying on it, and appreciate kindness without needing it. During this journey, your relationship with material riches has also changed significantly. You now see that true wealth comes from being in accordance with your actual purpose, even though you may have previously pursued financial security through traditional ways. The resources you require come to you naturally, through the magnetism that arises when someone acts from their own power, rather than through manipulation or desperation. People want to support your purpose because they sense your integrity and are reminded of possibilities they may have forgotten existed, not because you have persuaded them with sophisticated marketing. This change in how you view abundance affects all aspects of your life, not just finances. After all the betrayals and departures, the relationships that are left are of a caliber that is superior to anything you had before your difficulty started. The artistic endeavors that arise from your altered awareness possess a strength that your previous creations, no matter how well-meaning, could never equal. Your influence on other people's life now has a beneficial knock-on effect that benefits future generations. Dove brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. You've evolved into what some cultures refer to as a way shower, someone whose very presence proves that change is genuine, healing is feasible, and evolution is conceivable. This role was pre-programmed into your soul's blueprint before you ever took on physical form. It was not given to you by any human authority. The difficulties you encountered were cosmic preparation for a job that called for someone who had been refined by fire until only the unbreakable essence remained, not cosmic punishment for some unidentified crime. You can now fully access the gifts that were improved throughout your dark night of the soul. Now, that intuitive knowledge that was once softly murmuring in the background is crystal clear. Once coursing through your hands, the healing energy now flows like a river. The once uncertain remarks now have the authority of someone who has traversed the shadowy valley and come out on the other side with riches that are only discovered in the depths. But the most perilous part of your adventure is about to begin, and it demands all of your focus. Now, the same powers who previously attempted to destroy you are rushing to appropriate your message, lessen your influence, and turn your genuine offerings into commercial goods that support their established hierarchies of power. They're trying to domesticate you after realizing they can't get rid of you. They seek to transform your revolutionary consciousness into a cozy spirituality that doesn't alter anything and doesn't pose a threat to anyone. They try to condense your hard-earned knowledge into brief motivational sayings that boost people's spirits without really motivating them to change. However, you can now see through these attempts at deception. You are now immune to their current tactics because of the very experiences that earlier left you open to their tricks. Spiritual materialism is so blatantly obvious. You can distinguish between performance art intended to draw resources and attention from sincerely seeking souls and genuine transformation. The way they attempt to ensnare awakened souls in webs of fabricated drama and pointless strife is especially pernicious. They try to drain your energy by continual interpersonal instability because they know that beings of your kind cannot be subdued through conventional means. They set up scenarios that are intended to divert you into debates about trivial matters while ignoring the actual task of transformation. In an attempt to divert your attention and keep you from sustaining the prolonged focus required for profound spiritual work, they fabricate catastrophes that require your immediate attention. However, you have the expertise of someone who has thoroughly researched their strategies to avoid these pitfalls. You now walk with the fluid grace of someone who knows that not every invitation to confrontation needs to be accepted, unlike when you were once likely to be dragged into every contrived crisis, defensive about every charge, and reactionary to every provocation. You've learned to discern between fights worth fighting and distractions intended to thwart your goal, which is why you've developed what could be called heavenly indifference, not because you don't care about justice or truth. Don't people seek you out now? They are pulled to something they need badly, but can't quite put their finger on. They feel braver to confront their concerns, safer to take off their masks, and more optimistic about prospects they had previously given up on when they are with you. You've turned into a living example of how people might embrace their own power. You demonstrate to them what is possible just by being who you have become, without lecturing or pressuring them. A person's knowledge goes much beyond their own wisdom when they refuse to let the outside world to break their spirit. You've turned into a guardian of age-old truths that the contemporary society has lost in its haste for material wealth and technical development. You have been given timeless ideas that change lives and heal generations of pain, while others strive for outward accomplishments that rust and fade. People are able to reconnect with their forgotten divinity, their original purpose, and the love that is their true nature thanks to the insights that flow through you. Something else is happening right now that not many people realize, but you can feel it clearly. People who have been prepared by fire trials are being called into active service, and the collective consciousness of humanity is going through a huge upheaval. There's more to the seemingly random chaos that is emerging across many organizations and systems than meets the eye. It is the last stages of systems based on deceit and exploitation. For those who see the broader patterns at work, what appears to be societal breakdown to the uninformed view is essentially cosmic house cleaning. Fixing the failing systems and persuading the sleeping people to wake up are not your roles in this planetary transition. For those who are ready to see, for those who are ready to hear, and for those who are ready to accept that there is more than one viable way to live, it is your responsibility to be a steady light of truth, a source of wisdom, and a demonstration of possibility. However, enormous power also carries a great deal of responsibility, and the universe has been preparing you for this moment. Your personal growth was not the only goal of the solitary years. They also served to prepare you to act as a bridge between worlds. It wasn't simply your personal anguish that you transformed. It required a collective shadow worker, someone who could sustain the intensity without succumbing to it. Your struggles were more than simply triumphs for you. They were paving the way for others who would come after you. Guides who have already traversed the journey from unconsciousness to awareness, from fear to love, and from separation to union are needed as the world awakens. It needs individuals who have been put to the test by fire and come out on top. It requires spirits that have confronted and assimilated their own darkness. It requires people who can assist others in remembering their divine nature and who have recollected their own. Additionally, your trip has shown you the crucial distinction between assisting others and permitting their dysfunction, something that most people never realize. You may have mistakenly thought that being of service meant accepting every request and taking on everyone's suffering as though it were your own duty to heal them early in your waking process. The bitter lessons of those years taught you that genuine healing can only happen when someone takes responsibility for their own transformation. That sincere love sometimes looks like letting people face the consequences of their decisions, and that true service sometimes includes saying no. Because of this insight, you are very good at bringing about real change in people's lives as opposed to just helping them feel better about their issues for a short time. People who come into contact with you now receive more than just solace for their suffering. They also get skills to help them break free from the patterns that initially caused their pain. Their heroism is activated by your presence, not their victimization. Your remarks encourage their dedication to calm and clarity, rather than stoking their addictions to drama and mayhem. It is very amazing how accurately you can now pinpoint the underlying causes of human misery and provide avenues for true emancipation. Although you may have sought such instruction as a means of organizing and comprehending what you already knew intuitively, this competence was not formed through academic study or therapeutic training. Your personal path, from enslavement to liberation, from ignorance to consciousness, and from division to union, was the true source of your education. People frequently astonish themselves by your capacity to maintain composure in circumstances that would cause others to lose their minds. They ponder how you can see their suffering without becoming overwhelmed by it, how you can impart knowledge without coming out as dogmatic, and how you can set limits without getting aloof. They are unaware that these powers were developed during the course of your own metamorphosis, tempered by years of learning how to transmute pain into power, confusion into understanding, and injuries into knowledge. Glowing star yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand? Plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing His light into every step you take. You have also been given an almost superhuman capacity to see through time by your evolution, not in the sense of prophecy, but in the useful sense of knowing how existing patterns will unavoidably develop if they are not altered. This temporal awareness enables you to steer people away from harmful paths before the full effects materialize, to assist them in seeing the seeds of future suffering in decisions they make now, and to show them the way to results that will serve their highest good rather than satisfy their cravings for instant gratification. Your ability to recognize the long-term effects of decisions made in the short term makes you invaluable to people who are serious about change and frustrating to others who are looking for easy solutions to difficult issues. Even when someone is pleading for just that kind of relief, you cannot honestly provide them with a short-term fix that will lead to more serious issues later. Speaking truth that promotes their growth rather than consolation that permits their stagnation is a requirement of your integrity. Now is your moment. Not because the outside world has finally acknowledged your value. It might never do so completely, but rather because you have acknowledged it for yourself. Not because your situation is perfect. It may always be difficult, but rather because you've learned to see the beauty in broken things, the potential in hurdles, and the perfection in imperfection, because they are still healing from their wounds. The betrayals that once shattered you have changed into empathy for those who betray. What used to feel like punishment isolation has evolved into a capacity for solitude that enables you to connect with boundless wisdom anytime you need direction. The rejection that used to feel like proof of your inadequacy has changed into discernment that shields you from people and circumstances that don't serve your best interests. Every experience that initially seemed to be proof that you were cursed has turned out to be proof that you were chosen, not for a comfortable life, but for one that is meaningful, not for comfort, but for power, not for fitting in, but for leading those who are prepared to transcend the constraints that keep most people in mediocrity. They've been attempting to keep you in the dark about the fact that you can be wonderful without their approval. You can utilize your presence without their consent. Their comprehension is not necessary for you to achieve your goals. Your inner strength is sovereign, independent, and totally unaffected by their approval or backing. It cannot be taken away by anyone acting on their limited plane of consciousness, since it was bestowed upon you by forces far more powerful than their human institutions. Keep in mind that all you have gone through has been preparing you for this time as you embark on the next stage of your adventure. The information you possess is more important than ever. A world in pain is in dire need of the healing energy you have developed. You need the knowledge you've acquired from your struggles to help others go through their own changes. You are a leader in the emerging true reality because of the very traits that made you feel alienated in their false institutions. It was integrity, not rebellion, that made you refuse to fit in. It was an acknowledgement of your actual character, not defiance, that prevented you from accepting their restrictions. It was wisdom, not stubbornness, that you insisted on staying true to who you are. You embody the potent divine knowledge that was once concealed deep within the soul, but it is now revealed. It emanates from your presence, burns through your eyes, flows through your words, and changes everything it comes into contact with. The period of concealment is over. The time for playing tiny is over. The time for your complete emergence is here. Move forth with the assurance of someone who has been tried and found to be deserving. In the present, act with the authority of someone who possesses age-old wisdom. Talk with the authority of someone whose words have been flavored by hardship and made sweeter by giving up control. Love with the boldness of someone who understands that their heart is unbreakable despite its brokenness. Your full strength, unadulterated truth, which can only come from someone who has been through the fire and come out as light itself, is what the world is waiting for, not the diluted version you may have thought of sharing to make people feel at ease. Now is your time. This is what you're here to do. This is your destiny coming to pass, just the way it was supposed to.